Hello and welcome to today's lecture on Portfolio Possibilities Frontier. Now, before talking about this, this is the actual contribution which was made by the Harry Markowitz in 1950 when he introduced the concept of portfolio management. Here, Harry Markowitz who happened to win the Nobel Prize for the same theory, he brought the concept of optimization into portfolio theory. Now, let me actually drop what actually the theory is and what actually the portfolio possibility frontier is. Say, for example, we have the same Mr. X who has $1,000 and he wants to invest into two stocks, say for example A and B. Now he can create a set of different portfolios from these two stocks by investing into a different proportion. Say for example he may invest 10% here, he may invest 90% into this stock. Now he may invest 90% in this stock and he may invest 10% here. Accordingly, he may invest 20% here, then he may invest 80% here. He may invest 80% in stock A and he may invest 20% in stock B. Accordingly, a set of the portfolios can be created out of this $1,000. What essentially Markowitz did, he plotted all these portfolios on a graph by taking standard deviation on the x-axis and the expected returns on the y-axis. After plotting all the possibilities of the portfolios, he got a graph like this. And this graph is known as portfolio possibility frontier. Now, let me talk about this graph a bit more. Now, this graph has two parts. Now, let me change the color first. Now, if you look at this above part and the lower part, the lower part is convex and the above part is concave. And we have a point from which the graph changes from convex to concave, and the point from where the graph changes from the convex to the concave is known as global minimum variance portfolio. Now what essentially does this mean? Say for example I put 2 points here, say for example point X and point Y. Now suppose an investor is given two options, either to invest into X or to invest into Y. What would he choose? Now if we draw a line, for this amount of the risk, an investor is getting this amount of the return, but for the same amount of the risk he is getting some additional returns. So which means that portfolio Y is more efficient than the portfolio X. In this regard, the above part, that is the concave part, which I am highlighting in the green, this part was known as efficient frontier. Because all the possibilities lying on the efficient frontier gave us more returns for the same amount of the risk. But now we need to understand what is the basic difference between let me first talk about this. This graph is also known as a minimum variance portfolio, or it is also known as minimum variance frontier, where which gives us the lower amount of the risk for the same amount of the returns. But what is the difference between these 2 points, then X and the Y? Now let me write it here. Minimum variance frontier Now minimum variance frontier is this whole graph. It gives us lower level of risk for given level of return. Now what does this efficient frontier then mean? Now efficient frontier has two things. First, it gives us the lower level of risk for a given level of return. Why so? Because it is a part of the minimum variance frontier, plus it gives us an additional point, that is highest return for given level of risk. Now on the efficient frontier we get a more returns for the same amount of risk, but on this whole graph we have the lower level of the risk for the given level of the return. So all these points lying, that will be lying on this frontier, on this green, that portion I'm shading in the green, will be more efficient as compared to the points lying on the convex part. So the concave part of this portfolio possibilities frontier is known as the efficient frontier.